Rick.
You look good in red, man.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate it, man.
Look at those cut arms. Holy shit. That's unbelievable. Holy shoot. That's great.
Thank you, Rick. I really appreciate it, man. You look great as always.
Thank you. I got the wig on.
The wig looks great. You got a few of those, don't you?
Yeah, I've got one. I got a wig hat for every day of the week. And the funny thing is, on the back side, I can't turn around. It's disrespectful, but on the back side of all my wigs, I have the day, like a Wednesday or a Thursday, so they know what to expect. I don't want to shock anyone.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Hey, so the title of this podcast is, instead of working to be okay, just be okay.
Whoa, how do you do that?
Well, you know what? I've learned how to do it, Rick, and when I was growing up as a kid, I would be bothered, by what was going on in my household. And I would hold like such, disdain for my childhood growing up and my stepfather and all those things that would happen in that household, to where physical and verbal abuse was present. And when my aunts or uncles would see me suffering, they would say, "Hey, Keith, you'll be grown, in 10 years, you'll be 18 and you'll move away from all this, but right now in your childhood, just try to enjoy it the best you can and let it go." And I was like, "What do you mean let it go?" I was so like, I can't get that. And that went on for decades. Like, even after I left 18, my stepfather is no longer, I'm no longer in that home. So there's no impact to me, except the impact that I allowed to carry forward by me, creating suffering for myself, because my stepfather is no longer in my life. So I might as well, if I was going to suffer around the memories or the reflections of what happened with my stepfather, I might as well have never left home. I might as well just stayed there, right? And so, but what they were telling me was to let it go. I'm like, easier said than done. You don't know what I went through. And I'm like, they were wise, Rick. They were so wise. And so they were just like, let it go. So I didn't, and I continued to suffer for, like I said, decades. Then I started doing this practice. And then I started, things would happen, and I made it the practice of, don't let that bother you. Instead of getting bothered, get into being free, and that became like what I started to do. Like, stop expecting or needing the outside world or people to be a certain way for you to be okay inside. I started becoming aware of all those things. And then what would happen is little things that my mind would say were slights, that were disrespectful, that people were taking advantage of me, not honoring me, or whatever the case may be, I would start to hold on to instead of letting them go. And then when I started doing the practice, I worked on letting them go. And what I found is that as I've gotten deeper into my practice, that I no longer have to work at it. So you have the event. Yeah. I have what I think about the event, which is causing me the suffering. Then then I was working on letting that go. That's one way to do it. The other way that I used to do in the past was I didn't work on letting it go. I worked on being right and holding on to it. But when I started to get on this path, I started working on letting it go. So that's the middleman. And then finally, I was on the other side of it. So what I've learned to do now is cut out the middleman.
That's a great piece of advice. Yeah. That's very cool.
Just let it go. Yeah. I don't have to figure out why this happened, what this, and they said this, and I was disrespected, and this is the principle of it. No. All of that just means that when I finally get ready to move on, I got to spend more time with the middleman, which is working to let it go. Or something can happen, and right then I can let it go. It saves time. I get back to the business of experiencing joy and cultivating inner peace. So this goes with the title of the podcast. Instead of working to be okay, just be okay.
That's so cool.
And that's what I'm doing, Rick. Like everything, I'm just working to be okay. So I think I told you before the show that I just learned that there has been a leadership change with who I report to at work. Now the old me would be like, oh my God, we're in the middle of something. Now somebody else is going to come in. I'm gonna have to go down this whole road of like getting them acquainted with my work, hopefully they can see the value in it. Stop. just be okay. When whoever shows up, doesn't show up, just be okay. And I'm starting to do that with everything. I don't care what it is. I'm just like, instead of working to be okay, I'm being okay.
That's fantastic. Don't you think it's odd that people don't realize that they actually have control over how they react to things? They think that it's the external circumstance, but the truth is you have a choice in every circumstance and everything that happens to you. Whether you're served a dish in a restaurant and you look at it and you think, that's not what I ordered, you have a choice at that moment to act out, throw a fit, send it back, complain, or try something new. I mean, I'm not saying there's consequences for either one. I'm not saying never complain. What I'm saying is that you have a choice. I'm just focusing on the idea that there's a choice, because that choice really is the only personal freedom that you truly have. When you were speaking about that, Keith, I was thinking there's a very interesting book called Paradise Lost. I'm sure most of the viewers are familiar with it. It's John Milton, and he's an Enlightenment writer. And he said something that I think is so powerful. He said, the mind is its own place. The mind is its own place. And in itself, it can make a heaven of hell or a hell of heaven. And so Milton is basically saying, remember, folks, people who seem to have it all, the looks, the talent, the money, all the love, those folks can make themselves miserable, while people who are not blessed with any of those things can be perfectly content. It's within our own power. It's within our own individual power to be happy or to self-destruct, right?
Exactly. I totally agree, Rick. I mean, I see people like we talked about. One of my friends is really accomplished in her career. She's done amazing things. She fights for people that often don't have the resources, to fight. And so she does it on their behalf. And she's got this amazing life, when you look at it on paper. But when you talk to her, I mean, if you can go 2 minutes without her saying something that's happening in the headlines of the newspaper, I would be surprised. And all of which is, not peaceful or positive or inspires joy. And so in the space of all of this abundance and prosperity in her life, she is able to, behave, to make hell of some portion of it. And that is a choice. But again, I don't think she's aware that she's making that choice. I think she's at the effect of all these national and geopolitical events that are happening in the world that are, causing all of this suffering that she's experiencing. And I can relate, because that's exactly what I did, right? And it's just so interesting. I want to pause here because you look like you might want to say something.
Yeah, thank you. I was just thinking that, the news is never going away. And whether you're dealing with 1865 or 1910 or 2022, it's the same. It's the same stuff. I think it might be helpful. I mean, you want to be hip on current events, right? You want to know the culture. You want to understand the forces at play. You want to understand economics, and all of those things affect in some way our total life chances, which is all the news is supposed to do, is to kind of help us figure things out where we stand within the context of the world order. But the reality is, if you take it personally, you're going to spend a lot of time suffering.
Yes.
I would suggest strongly that your friend turn off the television and stop watching the news, particularly at night.
Yeah.
If you can't sleep when you turn out the lights, then I would say leave the lights on for a half an hour and read something uplifting. Read Eckhart Tolle. You read Thich Nhat Hanh. Read someone who has meaning for you in a way that talks about positive things that can help you cope with whatever you're struggling with. And if you're not struggling, God love you, look at a comic book and, and make up your own news story and be creative about it. Turn off the news, folks. I mean, honestly, that's just the worst. It gives you such a skewed, wrong impression of what human nature is. It's just wrong. I mean, when you are bombarded by nothing but negative, people killing each other, raping each other, poor victims getting slaughtered, people in the tornado. Every time there's a tornado, where do they go? The trailer park where there's 15 trailers upended and 3 kids are dead.
Right.
How is that helpful to you?
Yeah.
How does that prepare you for dealing with anything other than to be upset, nervous, scared, worried, hateful?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree, Rick. I think I read you that one quote a while about this 80-year-old guy who, talked about, what was happening in his life and stuff like that. And how he shared, about how life was good for him, and that 80 all the things that were happening in the world. This author was asking, like, how do you keep so upbeat, with all the tragedy? He said, I make my own headlines.
That's great.
He says, like, grandfather plays with kids,
That's very cool.
Old man observes, acts of kindness in his neighborhood. And he just goes down the list of what his headlines are. And that's what my headlines are. Like every day, man, I walk away and I'm just like, man, are you kidding me? Like, how can a man be so blessed, right? I mean, like, oh, the goodness that happened in my life today, and those were the headlines that I had on the days where we had these other things that happened in the news cycle, with the gun violence and whatnot. For those 2 unfortunate tragic events, I had 20 that I could rattle off like that without repeating one of them, of all the good that happened that I witnessed in the world, that I observed, that I got to be a part of. And so it's just so much of that. But, I'm choosing to make a heaven of my experiences in the world. Whereas before I did the exact opposite, back to your Milton quote. So what I've learned to do, man, is to really, really just be okay. Like to cut out the middleman of saying that instead of working to be okay, just be okay. And then I'll leave you with this. We have had some friends who've gone through some very challenging things, and you and I both have. And we talked about this before. One of our friends has gone through a divorce, and through that divorce, which could have been very contentious, like many divorces are, it could have been that way, or his relationship with his former significant other. But he made a choice that he was going to be okay throughout the whole process. Mm. And so it was as if, I remember he told us a story too. They were deciding like alimony and stuff like this. And he's just sitting there rooted in this moment. And the mediator was like, hey, listen, I'm going to take a significant portion of your monthly income. So, we can spread out over 7 years and it's a little bit less, or we can do 5, you can do 4.5 years. It's going to be really significant and hurt. He's like, let's do 4.5 years, just like he was like choosing to be okay. And when I talked to him afterwards, I said, what are you going to do? He's like, oh, I started taking my lunch to work instead of eating out. I started creating more, experiences with my kids that don't require money. Mm-hmm. Like he was choosing in a very practical, in a spiritual way, in a practical way, that he was going to be okay. Mm-hmm. Like he was going to skip the middleman of, you know what, I'm gonna have to go do this, and I'm gonna have to like really, work on like not saying anything wrong and not being triggered when I talk to them, or when the attorney calls, and every 2 weeks when I get paid, I'm gonna be like afraid to I'm gonna be reminded of this injustice. He didn't do any of that. Yeah. All he did was I'm going to choose a path to where I'm okay. And that's what he did. He chose that path. Mm-hmm. He chose to be okay. And so every day, man, from who I report to at work, to other things that happen that my Keith 1.0 would say that's bad, to all those things, I'm cutting out the middle person. They're out of here, Rick. It is straight right to, I'm pass and go. I'm collecting my $200 and I'm going straight to, I'm okay.
What a great headline, man.
Okay.
Beautiful, Keith. Beautiful. Cut out the middleman. Make your own headlines and make heaven this moment.
100%, Rick. Thank you, man. I love you, Rick.
I love you, Keith. Hey, thanks for including me. We'll see you next time.
Always.